Hollywood wants you to believe it owns science fiction. Starships, lasers, dystopias, all stamped made in USA. But what if I told you that France, yes, France, quietly forged sci-fi visions so daring they made Hollywood look safe? From haunting time travel loops to psychedelic alien worlds, the French didn't just dabble, they redefined the genre. Curious which films prove Paris could outdream Los Angeles? Stay with me. Some of these stories will rewrite what you thought sci-fi could be. Jetée, 1962. What if the most mind-bending time travel film ever made wasn't a Hollywood blockbuster, but a 28-minute French experiment told almost entirely through still photographs? That's Jetée, Chris Marker's eerie masterpiece that became the DNA for Terry Gilliam's 12 Monkeys. Forget sleek CGI. Marker delivers raw memory, frozen images flickering across the screen like fragments of a dream you can't quite piece together. And when one single moment of movement arrives, it hits harder than any special effect. The setup is brutal. Humanity is nearly wiped out by nuclear war. Survivors live underground, desperate to manipulate time itself to save the present. Enter a man haunted by a childhood memory, a woman's face on an airport observation deck, and the shocking image of a man's death. Scientists seize on that memory, sending him hurtling through time, not with gadgets, but through sheer psychological trauma. What follows isn't spectacle, it's meditation, on memory, on obsession, on the fragile thread that binds us to the past. Marker strips sci-fi down to its bones. No spaceships, no ray guns, just black and white stills, narration, and a story so unsettling it lingers in your head long after. Hollywood remade it, sure, but never recaptured its poetry. Watching Jetée isn't like watching a movie. It's like falling into someone else's nightmare. And when you realize how its tragic twist echoes our own fear of memory's betrayal, you get why it remains one of the most influential sci-fi films ever made. Alphaville, 1965. Imagine a film that looks like a hard-boiled detective story, but slowly reveals itself as a nightmare about computers controlling the human soul. That's Jean-Luc Godard's Alphaville, where trenchcoats, neon lights, and philosophy collide. Hollywood was still polishing chrome rockets. Godard built a dystopia out of real Paris streets, proving the future doesn't need sets when the present already feels alien. The plot is deceptively pulpy. A secret agent, let me caution, infiltrates a futuristic city ruled by Alpha 60, a supercomputer that bans emotion, poetry, even love. Break the rules, and you're executed by swimming pool assassins. Yes, really. But beneath that pulpy surface lies Godard's sharpest weapon, irony. He shoots futuristic dystopia in contemporary office blocks and highways, making modernity itself the prison. Then there's Eddie Constantine as Lemmy. He's not sleek or polished. He's grizzled, chain-smoking, and stubbornly human, stumbling through corridors of logic with a cigarette as his only rebellion. Paired with Anna Karina, Godard's muse, the film turns into a battle between icy rationality and messy, irrational love. What makes Alphaville unforgettable isn't just its critique of technology's cold grip. It's how Godard transforms low-budget constraints into a statement. Why build a futuristic city when the modern world already feels dehumanizing? Hollywood gave us gleaming sci-fi utopias. Godard gave us a warning dressed in noir shadows. And let's be honest, the warning feels a lot closer to our reality. Fantastic Planet, La Planète Sauvage, 1973. Take everything you know about animated films and throw it out. Fantastic Planet, directed by René Laloux and designed by surrealist artist Roland Topor, is unlike anything else. Hollywood was churning out glossy, family-friendly cartoons. France gave us a psychedelic allegory where humans are tiny, oppressed creatures treated like pests by giant blue aliens called drags. Forget singing animals. Here, humans are pets, rebels, and eventually, revolutionaries. The film drops you into the bizarre planet of Igam, where every frame looks like a fever dream pulled from an alien sketchbook. Plants sprout limbs, animals resemble living sculptures, and landscapes feel both beautiful and threatening. It's not just weird for the sake of weird. Every surreal image reinforces the allegory, colonialism, oppression, and the fragile fight for freedom. The story follows terror, a human child raised as a pet by a drag girl. As he grows, he learns the alien language and knowledge, turning that stolen education into a weapon for rebellion. Watching tiny humans rise up against godlike overlords hits harder than most Hollywood space battles because it's rooted in metaphor, not just explosions. Fantastic Planet won the Special Jury Prize at Cannes and became a cult hit worldwide. Its haunting visuals influenced everything from music videos to modern animation. The soundtrack alone, with its eerie jazz-funk tones, could hypnotize you. While Hollywood built spaceships out of plastic, Leloup built a world that felt genuinely alien, challenging viewers instead of comforting them. Watching it today still feels like entering a strange dream where beauty and horror live side by side. Time Masters, Les Maîtres du Temps, 1982. What happens when you combine René Laloux' visionary direction with designs by Moebius, the comic book legend, whose art shaped Blade Runner and Alien? You get Time Masters, a French animated odyssey that feels like stepping into a graphic novel that refuses to sit still. While Hollywood was locked in franchise mode, Laloux and Moebius created something playful, tragic, and defiantly original. The story begins with a boy stranded on a hostile planet after his parents are killed. His only lifeline is a communicator linking him to a spaceship of allies, racing to rescue him. Sounds like a simple survival tale? Not even close. Along the way, we meet telepathic aliens, bizarre landscapes, and time itself folding in on the characters. The closer they get, the stranger things become, until the rescue mission reveals a twist that flips the entire narrative. Moebius's fingerprints are everywhere. His designs, from sleek starships to grotesque alien wildlife, elevate every frame. Laloux, meanwhile, keeps the story grounded in emotional stakes. The boy's loneliness, the crew's determination, the bittersweet choices, they all make the spectacle hit harder. Time Masters didn't have the marketing muscle of Hollywood, but its DNA seeped everywhere. You can see echoes of it in Japanese anime, in European graphic novels, even in how Western films approached cosmic scale. While studios sold spectacle as escapism, Laloux and Moebius dared to ask, what if the spectacle itself questioned our place in the universe? That's the difference. Hollywood entertained. French science fiction dared you to dream uncomfortably. The Fifth Element, 1997. Finally, a French sci-fi film that didn't just rival Hollywood, it outspent and outshined it. Luc Besson's The Fifth Element is pure spectacle, a neon-splattered carnival of flying taxis, cosmic opera, and Bruce Willis grumbling his way through the apocalypse. At the time, it was the most expensive European film ever made, and it shows. Every frame bursts with style, every costume screams Jean-Paul Gaultier, every set feels like Moebius on a sugar rush. The plot? Earth faces destruction from a cosmic evil, and salvation rests on the unlikely alliance of a weary cab driver and Leloup, a perfect being played by Milla Jovovich. It sounds like standard blockbuster fare, but Besson twists it into something flamboyant, outrageous, and defiantly European. Hollywood's sci-fi of the 90s leaned on grit and cynicism. The Fifth Element embraced color, humor, and absurdity. Gary Oldman's villainous industrialist steals every scene, chewing the scenery with a plastic accent and a ridiculous haircut. Meanwhile, Chris Tucker's hyperactive Ruby Rhod pushes the film into full-blown chaos. It shouldn't work. Somehow it does. Critics were divided at release, some baffled by its tone. But audiences? They made it a global hit. Over time, it's become a cult classic, endlessly quoted and imitated. More importantly, it proved that France could play Hollywood's big-budget game and win by being weirder, bolder, and more stylish. Watching The Fifth Element isn't just fun. It's a reminder that sci-fi doesn't have to choose between spectacle and madness. It can have both, in spades. Immortal, Ad Vitam 2004. What happens when a comic book legend decides to bring his dystopian visions to life with early CGI? You get Immortal Ad Vitam, Enki Bilal's bizarre and hypnotic hybrid that looks like a fever dream halfway between a video game and a painting. While Hollywood was polishing the Matrix sequels, Bilal was crafting a New York where gods, mutants, and mortals collided in ways no American studio would dare. Set in 2095, the story drops us into a decaying cityscape where a giant Egyptian pyramid floats above Manhattan. Inside it, ancient gods deciding the fate of mortals. Horus, the falcon-headed deity, seeks a human host and finds one in a political dissident named Alcide Nicopol. But here's the kicker. Nicopol has just returned from a 30-year cryogenic sentence. As he tries to survive, Horus hijacks his body to pursue Jill, a mysterious blue-haired mutant woman who might be humanity's next evolutionary step. The film blends live action with CGI characters, a choice that baffled critics but gave the movie its otherworldly tone. Some characters look eerily digital, others painfully human, and that dissonance becomes part of the nightmare. Bilal wasn't chasing realism, he was chasing myth. His New York is less a city and more a surreal collage, part comic book splash page, part decaying future. Did audiences love it? Not exactly. Reviews were mixed, some calling it clumsy, others praising its ambition. But here's the truth. Immortal is unforgettable. Hollywood sci-fi rarely risks being this strange, this ugly, this entrancing. It's a flawed gem, yes, but one that proves French sci-fi could out-weird, out-risk, and out-dream even the biggest American productions. Watching it feels like stepping into a graphic novel that refuses to stay on the page. Eden Log, 2007. Forget space operas and shiny robots. Eden Log is a French sci-fi nightmare that drags you underground and refuses to let go. Directed by Frank Vestiel, this indie film proves you don't need a blockbuster budget to terrify and intrigue. While Hollywood was still serving glossy reboots, France dropped a grim, sweaty vision of humanity's collapse that looks like a video game gone to hell. The setup is as simple as it is unnerving. A man wakes up deep underground, covered in mud, with no memory of who he is or how he got there. Around him, a crumbling labyrinth of tunnels filled with corpses, mutants, and flickering machines. Slowly, he pieces together the truth that this subterranean prison is tied to a massive corporation exploiting the Earth and its people in ways too horrifying to ignore. The visuals are stark. The whole film is drenched in blue-gray light, like someone turned out the sun and left only fluorescent tubes to mock us. The sound design pounds with machinery, footsteps, and distant echoes, creating claustrophobia that Hollywood thrillers rarely sustain. What makes Eden Log fascinating is how it weaponizes confusion. You're as lost as the protagonist. Answers come slowly, twisted, and cruel. By the time you realize the scale of exploitation behind this nightmare, it's too late. Some critics found it too bleak. Others hailed it as French science fiction at its boldest. Raw, uncompromising, and unapologetically experimental. It may not be a crowd pleaser, but that's the point. Eden Log isn't here to entertain you. It's here to crawl under your skin. Hollywood gave us shiny dystopias. France gave us one that feels like the walls are closing in. And once you've been trapped in those tunnels, you'll never forget them. Renaissance, 2006. Picture Sin City colliding with Blade Runner, but set in Paris, 2054. That's Renaissance, Christian Volkmann's animated marvel that proved French science fiction could rival Hollywood visually and conceptually. Forget colorful explosions. This film is black and white, literally. A motion capture animated world rendered entirely in stark monochrome, where shadows feel heavier than bullets. The story centers on Ilona, a brilliant scientist who vanishes, and Barthélemy Carras, a detective hired to find her. But this isn't a simple missing persons case. The investigation leads Carras into the heart of Avalon, a mega corporation that basically owns the city, promising eternal youth through medical advances while hiding sinister secrets. Sound familiar? It should. The themes of corporate greed, surveillance, and the commodification of life echo through every frame. Visually, Renaissance is stunning. Paris isn't romantic here. It's a cold fortress of steel and glass, every surface either glowing or drowning in shadow. The animation style divides audiences. You either love its brutal contrasts or find it overwhelming. But love it or hate it, you can't ignore it. This is a world that swallows you whole. Critics called it Europe's answer to Blade Runner, and while it didn't spark franchises or sequels, it carved out something unique, proof that French sci-fi animation could rival anything Pixar or Hollywood had in the pipeline. Watching Renaissance feels like flipping through a graphic novel illustrated entirely in black ink, where every panel bleeds paranoia. Hollywood often sanitizes its dystopias. France, once again, refused. Here, beauty and brutality are inseparable, and the future looks less like progress and more like a warning carved in stone. Cargo, 2009. Want a reminder that European sci-fi can do space as well as anyone? Look no further than Cargo, a French-Swiss co-production that feels like the spiritual cousin to Alien and Solaris. While it shares DNA with Hollywood classics, it builds its own identity, a moody, atmospheric tale where loneliness weighs heavier than gravity. The story follows Laura, a doctor volunteering aboard a decrepit space freighter. Her mission? Earn a ticket to Rhea, humanity's promised utopia. But as she patrols the massive, decaying corridors, she starts to realize something is terribly wrong. Shadows move, cryopods hide secrets, and the ship itself feels alive, pulsing with menace. Instead of explosions and laser fights, Cargo thrives on atmosphere. The spaceship is a character, creaking, dripping, suffocating. The isolation is palpable. Laura's journey transforms from simple duty to existential dread as she uncovers the horrifying truth about Rhea and the future humanity has been chasing. Visually, the film punches above its budget. The sets feel tangible, practical, like you could reach out and touch the rust on the walls. And the slow burn pacing, combined with moody lighting and a suffocating score, keeps you glued. Was it a blockbuster? Number. But Cargo stands as proof that Europe didn't just copy Hollywood's space nightmares. It reimagined them, grounding cosmic terror in existential despair. Hollywood gave us sleek starships and fast edits. Cargo gave us dread that grows in silence, the kind that stays with you after the credits. Watching it is like drifting in space without a tether, beautiful, terrifying, and utterly unforgettable. Moebius's Arzak and Heavy Metal Legacy, 1970s to 1980s. If you've ever marveled at the neon futures of Blade Runner or the biomechanical nightmares of Alien, you've seen the fingerprints of Jean Moebius Giraud. But beyond inspiring Hollywood, Moebius helped shape French sci-fi cinema directly through short films like Arzak and contributions to the cult anthology Heavy Metal. These weren't feature blockbusters. They were visual detonations that blew open the possibilities of science fiction art on screen. Arzak began as a wordless comic, silent, dreamlike, a lone warrior flying across surreal landscapes on a pterodactyl. When animated versions appeared in the late 70s, they retained that eerie stillness, turning pages into moving paintings. No dialogue, no exposition, just pure immersion. It was French science fiction, daring to strip story down to image, trusting that mood and vision were enough. Then came Moebius's impact on heavy metal, the 1981 film and magazine it drew from. His designs influenced segments filled with grotesque beauty and alien wonder. These weren't polished Hollywood fantasies. They were raw, strange, intoxicating, like sneaking into another universe. Why does this matter? Because Moebius didn't just inspire films, he changed the visual vocabulary of science fiction. His fingerprints are all over Ridley Scott's Alien and Blade Runner, as well as later works by Miyazaki and countless animators. Watching Arzak or the heavy metal pieces today, you see the DNA of an entire genre unfolding. Hollywood gave us laser battles and starships. Moebius gave us visual philosophy, art that bled into cinema. And without him, half the sci-fi landscapes we take for granted wouldn't even exist. The Extraordinary Adventures of Adèle Blanc-Sec, 2010, Luc Besson never shied away from spectacle, but with The Extraordinary Adventures of Adèle Blanc-Sec, he dove headfirst into pulpy sci-fi adventure with a distinctly French twist. Forget superheroes. This is about a fearless journalist in the 1910s, Paris battling mummies, mad scientists, and, wait for it, a living pterodactyl swooping over the Eiffel Tower. Yes, you heard that right. Based on Jacques Tardy's cult comic, the film throws history, fantasy, and science fiction into a blender. Adele, played with razor-sharp charm by Louise Bourgoin, is no damsel in distress. She's relentless, clever, and completely unafraid of danger. One moment, she's outsmarting villains. The next, she's haggling with resurrected Egyptian royalty. Hollywood gives us clean-cut, polished heroines. France gave us Adèle, a chaotic, witty, and flawed human who feels all the more real because of it. Visually, Besson packs in set pieces that rival any blockbuster. The dinosaur in Paris looks like it leapt straight out of an early cinema dream. The tomb raiding sequences nod to pulp traditions while still feeling fresh. But what makes the film sparkle is its refusal to take itself too seriously. It embraces absurdity, laughs at its own madness, and dares you to keep up. Critics were divided, some calling it messy, but that's the point. Adèle Blanc-Sec thrives on mess. It's chaotic sci-fi pulp at its best, and a reminder that France could do adventure just as bold as Hollywood, only with more attitude and a lot more personality. The Last Battle, Le Dernier Combat, 1983. How do you tell a post-apocalyptic story without a single word of dialogue? That's the audacious gamble Luc Besson made with The Last Battle, his first feature film. While Hollywood's wastelands were filled with explosions and one-liners, Besson gave us silence, desperation, and a crumbling world where language itself has vanished. Shot in stark black and white, the film drops us into a brutal future where survivors scavenge in ruined cities. Jean Reno makes one of his earliest appearances as a violent antagonist, stalking the unnamed protagonist through the desolation. There are no speeches, no grand explanations, just survival, violence, and fleeting moments of humanity carved out of chaos. The silence becomes the story. With no words, every gesture, every glance, every scrap of kindness or cruelty screams louder. And because Besson stripped everything down, the film feels timeless, like a nightmare that could belong to any future. It's gritty, ugly, and deeply human. Watching characters struggle over scraps of food or battle in flooded ruins hits harder than polished Hollywood action because there's no distraction, no gloss, just raw survival. The Last Battle set the tone for Besson's career, bold, stylish, unafraid to break rules. It proved that French science fiction could take familiar dystopian tropes and reinvent them with audacity. While Hollywood asked what the apocalypse would look like, Besson asked something darker. What happens when even words die? Ares, 2016. Fast forward to 2016, and French sci-fi gave us Ares, a brutal dystopia that looks uncomfortably close to home. Forget spaceships, forget time travel. This is a future where corporations run everything, poverty suffocates the streets, and the only way out is televised blood sport. Sounds like the Hunger Games? Not quite. Ares is nastier, grittier, and far too plausible. Set in Paris, the film follows Rita Kateb as Ares, a down-and-out fighter who agrees to undergo experimental drug testing in exchange for a shot at survival. The catch? He has to compete in gladiatorial combat broadcast as entertainment. The fights are raw, brutal, and more terrifying because they don't look far from reality. It's not fantasy. It's corporations profiting off desperation. What makes Ares so striking is its scale. It's not about saving the world. It's about scraping by in a world already lost. The future Paris is crumbling, with people living in tents under highways, while executives lounge in towers above. The contrast stings because it feels familiar even now. Visually, the film nails the bleakness, concrete, rain, neon ads blinking over broken streets. Critics praised its intensity, even if they called it grim. And that's the point. Ares isn't here to comfort you. It's here to show you how easily survival can become a commodity. Hollywood gives us glossy dystopias. France gave us one that feels only a heartbeat away. Les Visiteurs du Soir, 1942. Now here's a curveball. Released during World War II, Marcel Carné's Les Visiteurs du Soir isn't sci-fi in the modern sense, but its fantastical, allegorical tone makes it a proto-sci-fi parable that rivaled Hollywood's escapist fantasies of the era. While American studios churned out musicals and war propaganda, Carné crafted a dark fable disguised as medieval romance. The story follows two mysterious strangers who arrive at a castle during a wedding feast. They bring music, charm, and, slowly, the unsettling truth that they're not human at all. They are emissaries of darker forces, manipulating love and betrayal to destroy happiness. Beneath the period, costumes lies something unmistakably speculative, a story about fate, control, and resistance against invisible power. Released under Nazi occupation, the film was widely read as allegory. The invaders who corrupt joy mirrored the regime that had swallowed France. Yet the ending, bittersweet and defiant, gave audiences hope disguised in myth. So why include it here? Because Les Visiteurs du Soir shows that France's imagination didn't wait for rockets or time travel to rival Hollywood. Even in the 1940s, French filmmakers were using allegory as speculative fiction, bending genres to reflect fear and resilience. Hollywood had spectacle. Carnet offered coded rebellion. And sometimes, imagination itself is the boldest sci-fi of all. Woman in the Moon, 1929. Technically German in origin, Fritz Lang's Woman in the Moon circulated widely in France, where it became a cornerstone for early European sci-fi cinema. Why include it here? Because French audiences embraced it, re-edited prints circulated through French distributors, and its impact bled directly into the country's early cinematic imagination. And yes, footage is still accessible. Decades before Apollo, Lang and his French contemporaries envisioned a moon mission with startling accuracy. Multi-stage rockets, countdown launches, space travel logistics, all things Hollywood wouldn't touch until years later. Watching it now feels like stepping into a prophecy, with miniatures and set designs that still impress almost a century later. For French audiences of the late 1920s, this wasn't escapism. It was possibility. It showed cinema could leap beyond romance and crime into speculative wonder. And while Hollywood was still finding its footing with genre, France and Europe more broadly was already planting seeds for cinematic science fiction. By including it here, we acknowledge that French science fiction didn't just rival Hollywood later, it was part of the foundation, shaping the way audiences around the world dreamed of space long before NASA existed. So there you have it, 15 French sci-fi films that proved the future wasn't just scripted in Hollywood. From silent lunar prophecies to neon chaos and underground nightmares, France gave us visions that were bold, strange, and unforgettable. Which one stunned you most? Drop your answer in the comments. Subscribe for more cinematic deep dives, and remember, the future of sci-fi isn't always in Los Angeles. Sometimes it's been hiding in Paris all along.